This time we're looking at the purchase order. Now, the purchase order is kind of an unusual form in some ways because it doesn't actually record a transaction, and it's only going to be used if you have inventory, and even if you have inventory, it'll still only be used in certain circumstances. To get a better idea of that, I'm going to jump over to the flowchart to get a feel for this. The flowchart I'm going to have over here. Now note, this is the QuickBooks desktop flowchart. People get mad at me for using it for an online course, but it's just a flowchart. It's the same for any kind of accounting system, is going to have the same basic flow, and this is just a nice flowchart which happens to have basically the same names of the forms as in QuickBooks Online. So let's consider the purchase order, which is right here in the vendor flowchart. So you got the purchase order, and then we flow out here to basically finally paying the bill. So remember that a purchase order has to do with, in essence, a request for inventory. That's what a purchase order will be doing. When we have inventory, we have to ask ourselves some questions. That being, are we going to be tracking the inventory on a perpetual inventory method inside of QuickBooks, where we're not only tracking the dollar amount of inventory, but the units of inventory, which is a more complicated system to set up, more sophisticated, but pretty cool if you can get it set up, because then it'll record things automatically? Or are we using a periodic inventory system, possibly tracking the inventory in another system like Excel, or possibly online in platforms that we sell stuff on, like a Shopify store or something like that? And then when we record the inventory in our system, we're just going to record the cash transactions and then do a periodic adjustment for it. So we'll talk more about that in future presentations. But in this case, we're going to be dealing with a purchase order, which usually means we're going to be using a perpetual inventory system, meaning we have the full service kind of system within our QuickBooks account, meaning if you're a bookkeeper, this is a point of specialization. Your question is, do I want to pick up clients that deal with inventory? If I am picking up clients that deal with inventory, what kind of inventory? Do they make the inventory? Is it a job cost kind of system? Is it custom products that they're making? In which case you're going to have raw materials, work in process, finished goods. Is it a process cost system, which you'll still have those items? Or do they just purchase things and then resell them? If they just purchase things and resell them, how are they doing that? Do they have that on a Shopify store, in which case maybe I do the inventory outside of Shopify, or am I tracking the inventory within the system? If we're tracking the inventory within the system, then the question is, how do we order the inventory from the vendors? Now note that if I was going to order something from an online store like Amazon, what would happen is I would order it, I'd have to pay for it as an individual when I ordered it. And that would mean it's basically kind of mine, even though I don't have it yet. They haven't shipped it to me because I already paid for it, which would mean I would record the transaction when I pay for it. If that's the kind of system you have in your business, you have to pay for the item when you order the item, then you're going to record a transaction at the point that you pay for it with like an expense form, which is a type of check form generally, right? But if you're not paying for it at that time, possibly you're ordering like 100 teacups from China or something like that, they manufacture them, and for whatever reason you have a little bit more control over the situation, you can say, I would like to order 1,000 teacups, and you don't pay them. Instead, they ship the teacups to your warehouse, and then you get the teacups with a bill in it, and then you pay the bill or enter the bill into the system. That's when the purchase order comes into play. It's going to be a request form that doesn't actually enter any data in terms of financial transaction into the system, but we still need to track it, because when those teacups actually come into our system, then we're going to have it in the inventory. We can imagine the bill is in the teacups. We can match what we received to what we requested in the purchase order. Then we could use that purchase order to create the bill form, increasing accounts payable, and then basically pay off the bill form. At that point, we'll be in the same spot we were in the prior presentation, where we entered the bill, then we sort the bills, and we pay the bills. It's just now that we have this added step of the purchase order requesting the inventory before we actually pay for it. All right, so that's the only time you'll have the purchase order in play. And so you want to make sure that when you're thinking about the clients you're dealing with or what type of your business you're in, you can kind of say, am I going to have to deal with the purchase order or not have to deal with the purchase order?